are surface water hydrology, hydrological modeling, erosion and reservoir sedimentation studies, hyperspectral remote sensing, applications of soft computing techniques in water resource engineering. Uh, Garg sir have completed his doctoral degree from Indian Institute of Bombay, where he has received the excellence in thesis work for his doctoral thesis, which is which is awarded by Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay, Mumbai. So he has been peer reviewer to multiple international and national journals, and we are really fortunate to have him as today's speaker. Now, may I request Garg sir to please start the proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abhijit and Dr. Deshpande for giving me this opportunity to interact with you all. So, without wasting further time, the today's topic of my talk is geospatial technology applications in water resources. So, all of you know what is remote sensing. Remote sensing is a mechanism or technique to
Sir,
measure.
just a minute.
Yeah.
Excuse me, sir. Sir, you need to start the slide share because we are not able to
Okay.
see.
Okay. Now
Yeah.
it has been removed.
Yes. Share the content. Share the slide.
Fine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Sorry.
Yes. Yes.
So
Yes.
today's topic is geospatial technology, geospatial technology application in water resources. So before I start, I will just briefly on in one slide I'll explain what is remote sensing to all of you. So all of you know that remote sensing is a technique to measure the environmental variables without contacting them physically. So in this process, we measure the strength of electromagnetic radiation in different wavelength regions, as shown in the figure here. So most of the sensors at present are working in the visible infrared region, and with the time, the remote sensing technology has improved, and now we have sensors in microwave region too. These are for Earth observing satellites or sensors. They are communication satellites; those work in other wavelength region. So to extract the information from the remote sensing data, we use some mathematical and statistical algorithms. So in this lecture, we will see how remote sensing data can be used in water resources or management of water resources. So before I start, this is the basis of the remote sensing, that whenever the energy incident on a particular object on the surface of the earth, either it gets reflected or absorbed. In case of water, it gets transmitted also. So as all of us know that whenever the energy incident upon the water, it gets absorbed mostly. So because of this kind of spectral response curves we usually get for different common features. Here I like to mention that each and every feature on the surface of the earth, it behaves differently with the interaction of the light or the electromagnetic radiation. So some you can see here the vegetation which reflects highest in the NIR region. And if you see the case of soil, it reflects in almost in all the regions and mostly in the highest in the soil region. Similarly, water, as all of you know, that it absorbs most of the energy incident upon it in the NIR region, and it reflects a little bit around 10% in the visible region. Those are blue, green, and red region. So using this information, we can map these different features of Earth using remote sensing data. I'm talking about the optical remote sensing data at present. So using the optical multispectral remote sensing data, we can map the water bodies. So how it will appear on the satellite image. You can see here, I have shown you the example of the same water body in different spatial resolution. You can see here in the bottommost image, these are the example of MODIS. Those are a bit coarser remote sensing data. And if you see here the Landsat 30-meter data, so you can see here, you can visualize that the water land boundary is much clear in the high spatial resolution data. So whenever we are doing the water body mapping, we should go for higher spatial resolution data. And you can see that the water is appearing darker in color. So this big water is why it is appearing darker in color, because it absorbs all the energy incident upon it in near infrared region. And this is the false color composite, standard false color composite. That is why the water is appearing darker in this remote sensing data. So as a conclusion point, we should take high spatial resolution data whenever we are doing the water body mapping. So where this water body mapping can be utilized. So we have seen that, I'll give you the examples where it can be utilized that. But we have seen that the based on the certain spectral response, we identify the features on the surface of the Earth. Similarly, we have seen the spectral signature curve of the water, but this spectral signature of the water gets affected by many factors, such as time of the year. Okay, it may be before the onset of the before the monsoon, after the monsoon. Then you may see that there is a change in the quality of the water, and because of that, the reflectance may change. And again, with sun elevation angle, when with the time your sensor location also changes and the sun elevation angle changes, so that also affects the spectral signature of the water. And then the atmosphere and its constituents present when the sensing is going on, that also affects the spectral signature of the water. And then there are many factors such as roughness of the water. You will have different reflectance curve for the inland water. Those are smooth as compared to the sea water. Those are bit disturbed or rough surfaces there because of the high waves. And you may not find the pure water on the surface of the earth in a natural condition. So there may be something may be floating over it, like film, foam, debris, or something. So if it is there, then again the reflectance curve of the water will change. And then the floating material itself, they have their own characteristics, spectral characteristics. They may absorb or reflect the reflectance and the energy or EMR. So it will change the spectral response of the water. And then depth of the water also plays an important role while using the remote sensing data for water body mapping. So we should know how much depth water we are going to map. And then the turbidity, as I have mentioned already. So these are some of the factors which affect the spectral signature of the water, through which we identify the water in the satellite image. So this is how the water, I have given you the example of Krishna River Basin, lower Krishna River Basin, as seen in the Landsat image on the top image. Here you can see that there is a river water. Yeah. This is a river, this is a reservoir. They are check dams and the water behind them. So there are different type of water body available in this thing. So how to extract this water body from a satellite image, optical remote sensing data? So we can apply simple band ratioing technique, which we called as NDWI. So this is the formula for NDWI, where we take the ratio, the normalized difference ratio of green minus near infrared and the green plus near infrared. So if we apply simple this kind of band ratioing technique, we can generate this kind of output where the water bodies have been highlighted or enhanced. And later, using the running the query, we can do the water body mapping and we can estimate the area of the water. So the water body mapping is very important from different purposes. So I'll show you how remote sensing or where the water body mapping is important. So in this way, we have also mapped the entire water bodies of the entire India. So and there are tools. So ISRO, they are mapping the water body. Most of the water bodies, those are more than 2 hectares of the area, and their information is being provided as water body information on Bhuvan portal of ISRO. So if you see, I have shown you the example of Maharashtra only. If I click on this Jaikwadi Dam or Nath Sagar Reservoir, so I will get the information about it. So on 1st May 2020 to 31st May 2020, the water spread was this much and the capacity was around this much. So this information is freely available, which may be very useful for many of these studies. So the water spread has been estimated using the remote sensing data, and you can see which sensor data it has been used in this analysis. So it is LES3 data which has been used, and they have used area capacity curve to estimate the capacity of the reservoir. So this way, the capacity of the reservoirs can be estimated using water body mapping. Similarly, global water body mapping tools are also available. So I forgot to tell you that this comes with a time slider. So you can change the time and you can see how the particular water body is changing with time. Slide this slider and you will come to know with time how this water body is changing, its spread is changing, and how the capacity is changing. Similarly, this global water body mapping portal, it also comes with a time slider. Yes, the slider is somewhere here, and you can change the time and you can get the you can study the dynamics of the water spread in entire over the globe. So the first section that we have discussed is using the water body mapping using the optical remote sensing data. So all of you know that the optical remote sensing data, it has the limitation in case of the cloud. If the cloud is present, then you may not be able to map your water body of interest. So in this case, you can utilize the microwave data. So all of you know that there are different sensors, active, passive. So as the advantages of active sensor are greater than the passive, I've shown you the example of active remote sensing data for water body mapping. So here I have shown you the image of a radar set sensor. It is a part of Kosi River basin, and you can see that these dark pixels, all these dark pixels are water, and this is settlement, high backscattering, and the low backscattering areas are the agricultural land. So based on the different mechanism of scattering phenomena, we can identify water, because water act as a smooth surface, and because of smooth surface, the specular reflection takes place, and very less backscatter reaches to the sensor, and this way we can map the water body. So this sensors, this kind of sensor are mostly used for mapping the floods. So I'll show you the examples. So real world application of the water body mapping, you can monitor the important water bodies regularly, as remote sensing provides the synoptic coverage at a regular interval. You can do the change detection studies, as I have shown you the example of Tehri Reservoir, before the construction of the reservoir, after the construction of the reservoirs. So this kind of information is important when doing the environmental impact assessment or the resettlement, or to analyze how much area has been submerged, forest area or agriculture area has been submerged. So for those kind of analysis, this kind of water body mapping may be utilized. You can monitor the critical water bodies, such as I have shown the example of Nani Lake. In the year 2017, there was high INQ about the lake, that the water level has gone down. So that is why we have analyzed this lake using the high resolution and multispectral remote sensing data. Similarly, you can also monitor the critical glacier lakes. If you are able to map the water body, you can analyze how the water body spread is changing, whether it is going to be critical or not. So those kind of analysis can be done if you know the water body mapping using remote sensing data. You can do the flood mapping, as I told you that all of you know that Assam is state is very frequently flooding state in India. So I have shown you the example of SAR data, radar set data. This is the composite of for the entire state, and you can see if this area, these dark pixels are flooded water, and you can see that which area, which district has been flooded during this particular time. So this kind of analysis or can be done using remote sensing if you know the mapping of water body using remote sensing data. Then I'll talk about the quantification of hydrological components. So all of you know that what is hydrological cycle. The input to the system is the precipitation, and then there are various processes take place such as evapotranspiration, soil moisture storage, surface runoff, snow melt runoff, evapotranspiration, and interception. So in each of these hydrological processes or components, there is a role of remote sensing. Either you can directly map these processes using remote sensing data, or you can model them using remote sensing inputs. So precipitation, for example, I have shown you the if you see, this is the location of IMD grids, IMD gauge stations, sorry. And you can see here the distribution of rain gauges. It is some states it is dense distribution. Some state there is no rain gauges. And if you can see this area, so if you are your study area lies in these regions where the IMD gauges are less, then you have to rely on some input for your hydrological modeling, so that you can generate using the remote sensing data. To retrieve the precipitation, you can use the different regions of the remote sensing data. You can use visible infrared region, thermal infrared region, or passive microwave region, even the active microwave region. So how we can use this, I'll show you the example. So you might have seen this kind of images in the news channels that this area it is going to rain. So how they do this analysis, they uh, using the um, visible infrared region, they estimate and they may map the type of cloud, what kind of cloud it is, cirrus, cumulus. So it depends on the type of the cloud. And they also monitor the cloud vector motion, in which direction the cloud is moving. And then they also measure the cloud top temperature. At the top of the cloud, what is the temperature? So it is generally considered that if the temperature above the top of the cloud goes less than minus 40 degree centigrade, then it may precipitate. So it depends on the cloud type of cloud, cloud top temperature, and with the help of the vectors, cloud motion vectors, we can identify in which area how much precipitation can occur. So this is how this model is called Geo's precipitation index. And in India, we use Insect 3A, Kalpana, or Insect series data, which is available at MOSDEC for the to estimate the precipitation using this approach, using the visible infrared region data. We can also utilize the passive microwave remote sensing data for rainfall estimation. So here I have shown you the sensitivity of the precipitation with the brightness temperature in the passive microwave data. So if you see that it has been seen that the higher wavelength, higher frequencies, and the lower frequency channels most accurate for the they have more correlation with the precipitation rate. So what they do in this approach, they identify or they calculate this index called scattering index, where they use the brightness temperature in the lower frequency, that is 19 and 22 gigahertz, and the high frequency 85 gigahertz. And then these A1, A2, A3 are the constants, and then they estimate this scattering index, and then they correlate this scattering index with the rain rate. And then this regression equation can be applied, and the rainfall estimation can be done using passive microwave remote sensing data. Similarly, active microwave remote sensing data can also be used for the estimation of the precipitation. So the principle is same as we have the Doppler radars, Doppler weather radars on ground. These radars also work in the same similar fashion. So your rain drops and cell and the rain cell separation, these are the factors affecting the radar reflectivity. Based on this, the type of rain, how much rain it is, can be identified using the active microwave remote sensing data. So you might have heard about this tropical rainfall measuring mission, TRMM. It provides the rainfall estimate at every 3 hours. So using this data at every 3 hours, you can get the rainfall. but this sensor now it is not working. Now the similar kind of data is available through the GPM, Global Precipitation Mission constellation data. So these are the countries which are contributing in this mission for the global rainfall measurement. So this data is also freely available on the internet. So I have given the sources for different data. So rainfall data sets from Kalpana or insect series, you can get from this data from the MOSDAQ. TRMM or GVM data you can get from this particular source, and other data rainfall data sources are like Climate Prediction Center data. These data can be utilized for your project work, and you can where the rainfall data is not available through the IMD. Similarly, we can also estimate the snow cover, which is also an important parameter. If your region is snow fed or your river basin is snow fed, you must know how much snow cover is happening in my region. So if you analyze the temporal remote sensing data, and as I told you earlier, that based on the reflectance curve or the spectral response, we can identify the particular feature. So here you can see that the snow reflects highest in the visible region and absorbs all the energy incident upon it in the NIR region. So using this information, we can identify the snow cover. So these are the temporal images, and here I have shown you the change in the snow cover, seasonal snow cover over the northwestern Himalayan region. So this can also be done using the remote sensing data, the snow cover mapping. Then soil moisture estimation can also be done using remote sensing data. It is very important parameter for agriculture practices. So again, all the regions, the visible region, thermal region, or active microwave, passive microwave, these all the regions of the EMR can be utilized for the soil moisture estimation. So all of you know that as the temperature, as the soil moisture increases, the temperature of soil will reduce. So based on that, this also we can use the thermal infrared region. So mostly at present we are using the active and the passive microwave data for the snow for the soil moisture estimation. So these active microwave remote sensing data, as the with the change in the surface condition, in this case it is moisture. If as the moisture increases, the dielectric constant changes. So this change will change the backscattering phenomena. So based on that, we can identify the soil moisture. So here I have shown you the example of one of the ERS1 data of Canada. So in this lower part, if you see that there are bright pixels, so these bright pixels shows that there is more moisture than the upper part, because it has been noticed that in during this region, during this time, the rainfall has occurred in this region. As you know, rainfall is a especially variable phenomena. So in this region there was a rainfall in the lower part, but there was no rainfall on the upper part, and because of that the dielectric constant of the soil has changed. And because as the dielectric constant has increased due to soil moisture, the backscattering has increased, and if we have the field measurement at these locations, we can utilize inversion models and we can do the soil moisture mapping. Similarly, we can utilize the passive microwave data. As the soil moisture increases, the emissivity decreases, and with the emissivity decreases, the brightness temperature will decrease, and the lower frequencies of the passive microwave data are more sensitive towards the soil moisture. So using this information, we can do the soil moisture mapping using passive microwave data. So you might have heard about the AMSRE soil moisture product. So this is the brightness temperature generated using the AMSRE data for the entire globe. So if we using the different modeling techniques, we can do the soil moisture mapping. So similarly, we have done it for the entire India for the monsoon period. So you can see how the soil moisture is changing with the monsoon in India in the year 2009. So you can see here as the southwest monsoon is progressing, the soil moisture is changing along the India. So this is the capability of remote sensing in estimating the soil moisture using AMSRE, and now there are products available from these as MOS, soil moisture ocean salinity sensor, as map, soil moisture active passive. Here in this soil moisture active passive, they have utilized both the regions of the EMR, that is the active and the passive microwave data. So these data sets are available. You can use them and you can do the soil moisture estimation. Similarly, interception can also be estimated using remote sensing data. All of you know that whenever there is a precipitation, if there is a vegetation, it intercepts a large number of precipitation. So using the remote sensing data, we can derive the NDVI, normalized difference vegetation index, similar to water index, as we have seen that. But the bands are now NIR and red bands. So knowing the NDVI is a proxy of your healthy vegetation. If vegetation is healthy, then how much is the leaf area index? So based on the leaf area index, we can estimate how much the particular vegetation can intercept the rainwater. So based on this kind of interception maps can be generated using the remote sensing data. Even we can also estimate the evapotranspiration. For evapotranspiration estimation, there are various techniques such as vegetation indices based method, surface temperature based methods, scatter plot method. So if we in these methods we identify how much is the what kind of vegetation is present, how much it can evaporate. Using the energy balance approach, we can do the evapotranspiration estimation. Even the land surface temperature, how the land surface temperature is changing, and then we can plot these two and we can do the evapotranspiration estimation. Even the actual evapotranspiration for the entire globe, it is provided as a product by Moody's. So you can see here the variation of the evapotranspiration in annual evapotranspiration of 2014 in over the India. So this is the capability of the remote sensing data for estimation or quantification of hydrological components. So these components are very important in the hydrological studies. So if you want to do the hydrological study, we do these kind of studies for a particular unit, which we call as a watershed or basin. So earlier we used to delineate this watershed and basin on the topo sheets. So all of you know that if it is a large basin, it will have large number of topo sheets, and it will be difficult to uh, delineate the watershed or basin over these number of topo sheets. Then, with the help of remote sensing data such as digital elevation model (DEM), which we call as DEM, digital elevation model, which gives the elevation at each pixel digitally. So using this digital elevation model, you can do the fill sync. You have to remove the fill sync. This technique is called hydroprocessing of DEM, and then in which direction water will flow, then how much accumulation can happen, and based on this threshold, we can delineate the drainage basins. And then for each drainage basin, for each drainage, we can do the stream ordering also using remote sensing data and the GIS, and then we can delineate the watershed, sub-watersheds, or the basin. So this can be done with the single click in the GIS using the remote sensing data, that is DEM, digital elevation model. So this is the digital watershed for the Solani River at Roorkee as outlet. So this for this analysis we require digital elevation model. So I have mentioned that how digital elevation model can be generated. So it can be generated using the contours and point data. If you have, you can interpolate them and you can generate the digital elevation model for your study region, or using the stereo pairs remote sensing data, which we call as photogrammetric approach. If you have the stereo pairs, means looking at the same location from two different angles, as our eyes work on same principle. So the Cartoset data, it has the stereo pair capability, and for the entire India, this Carto DM is available at 30-meter resolution. So similarly, Aster DM, you might have heard about the Aster DM. It is also done generated using the photogrammetric approach using the Aster data. Then you might have heard about the SRTM remote sensing, SRTM DEM. which has been generated using the INSAR technique, interferometric SAR technique. So depends upon your objective, you can utilize, or your region, you can utilize either of these DEM, and you can generate the watershed basin, or uh, uh, you can extract the topographic features such as slope, aspect, flow direction, flow accumulation for your studies. So for Indian region, as I told you, CartoDM is available for entire India at 30-meter resolution. From it is available at one portal. You can download. It is free. You can download it and you can utilize it for your study. Even these Aster, SRTM, all these DMs are freely available on internet at good reasonable accuracy of 30 meter. Then in this lecture, we will also take some slides on the inputs for the hydrological modeling and how hydrological modeling can be done using the remote sensing inputs. So all of you know that there are different type of methods: empirical, conceptual, physical. And the runoff, it depends upon the many factors such as rainfall characteristics, catchment characteristics, and other climatic characteristics. So the interrelationship between these factors is very complex. Therefore, we require the modeling approach for the runoff estimation, which we call as hydrological modeling. So we require hydrological modeling to understand the hydrological processes, to estimate the individual hydrological components, to generate scenarios with respect to land use change and the climate change, to manage the water resources for the benefit of the mankind, for the river management, groundwater management. So there are a number of applications of hydrological model. So we have number of hydrological models available. I have compared the most widely used hydrological models such as HAC HMS, SWOT, Mike, Vic. So out of this, the Mike is the commercial software. These are the softwares. Those are semi distributed. Those work on the sub-basin scale. Vic is variable infiltration capacity model, which works on a grid scale, and the runoff calculation in this Vic is physically based, and in these models it is empirically based. So all of you know that if it is a physically based distributed model, the accuracy of the runoff estimation will be higher. So we have implemented this model for the first time in India. This model has been developed at the University of Washington as a research model, but in 2010 we have implemented this model for entire India. So this is the study which we have carried out. So we have, for the realization of this model, we have used the GIS inputs, remote sensing inputs such as digital elevation model from the GTOPO 30, GTOPO 1 hydro-K data, and the soil moisture from FAO, soil texture map from the FAO, and the land use land cover from the University of Maryland, Department of Geography. So these were the inputs to the model, and then we could generate this kind of output. So entire water balance can be studied, especially temporally both. So we can see here in the first column, this is the rainfall in different years, that is 95, 2000, 2005, and the runoff potential in 95, 2000, and 2005. How much is the evapotranspiration in each year? How much is the base flow? So in this way, the entire water balance can be studied using the hydrological modeling using remote sensing inputs. So later we have validated our results with the Central Water Commission estimate, and we can see that the model has behaved very nicely, and the results are very accurate. Then, as I told you, that if your river basin is snow fed, then you need to study the snow cover. So using the remote sensing data, you can easily identify, or you can map the snow. So I have shown you the snow depletion curve for the entire northwestern Himalayan region. So in this time period, it has increased, and then again it is decreasing, and again started increasing. So this input can be given to the snow melt runoff models such as SRM, snow melt runoff model developed by Martinek in 1970s for the European basins. So we have applied this model for the different basins in India, such as for the Alaknanda River Basin, for the Manali River Basin, for the Bias River Basin, as Manali as the outlet, and we could achieve very good results. And in this way, the snow melt runoff can also be estimated. Then this study I have recently done, um, uh, site suitability analysis for hydropower project, and I will not commit that it is a very we can do the very critical study, but preliminary studies can be done using the remote sensing data. So for the post pre project scenarios, we can for the site suitability analysis, we require digital elevation model, land use land cover map, which can be generated using remote sensing data. Meteorological parameters such as rainfall, temperature, humidity, all these are available through remote sensing. Soil database you can generate in, you can, if you have the NBSS soil map, you can generate in its database in GIS. Geomorphology map, linament map, these are you can get from the Bhuvan as layers, and you can utilize. And you can use GIS for proximity analysis for domestic, industrial, agriculture demand. So using these inputs, it can help you to carry out the environmental impact assessment. So you can do the water spread calculation, expected water spread calculation at particular location of the dam, using only the digital elevation model. I'll show you the examples, and you can generate the land use land cover map using the multispectral remote sensing data. And using this will tell you how much forest is there, agriculture is there, and how much settlement is there at a particular location. And if you overlay the water spread which you have calculated, you'll come to know how much it is going to how much the forest, agriculture, and settlements are going to submerge. Then suitable site for relocation also can help you using can be done using the land use land cover and climate data. Suitable site for safe waste disposal can also be done using the land use land cover data. Water quality and water logging can also be estimated using the Earth observation data. Environmental flow downstream can also be done using suitable hydrological model using the geospatial inputs. And how much your project is going to irrigate, if it is a multi-purpose dam site, then how much area it is going to irrigate, how much power can be generated. This kind of analysis can be done, which will help you to generate the environmental impact assessment report. So for this kind of analysis, we require different data sets such as elevation. So I have shown you that elevation is available from SRTM, Aster, CartoDM. Then you can derive the topographic parameters such as slope, aspect, flow direction, flow accumulation, drainage network, watershed, basin boundary, their area, longest flow path, centroid. So those are required for the hydrological modeling purpose. Then meteorological parameters such as rainfall, temperature, relative humidity, radiation also you can get from the different sensors, remote sensing sensors, as I listed in this slide. And for these studies, you require land surface parameters such as land is land cover, soil moisture, soil land surface temperature, albedo, evapotranspiration, snow cover area, snow water equivalents. So for each of them, either their direct coordinates are available, or you can also retrieve them using the remote sensing, as the sources are listed in this slide. So for the pilot study which I have done for the Lakwar Dam, which is coming up in the Dehradun only on Yamuna River. So I have used the Cartosat DM. So this is where you can go to Bhuvan and you can download the Cartosat DM, which is required for the water spread area calculation and the setup of the hydrological modeling. Then you require land use land cover. So you can use this as the DM you can download for your study area, even your satellite image from the resource set 1 and resource set 2 list 3 data. You can download for any of the region. It is free of cost. But these thematic services such as land use and wasteland, geomorphy, lineament, you cannot download, but you can use these layers as WMS layer, web-based services you can utilize. and you can use this information for your study. So in my study, I have taken this geomorphology and the lineament map of the Lakwar catchment. So as I told you, this study I have done recently for Lakwar Dam, which is coming up in Uttarakhand, in Dehradun district only. So these are the salient features of the this particular project. And so how I started this, this is the digital elevation model of the entire region. Then I have done the hydro processing, and I have extracted the catchment for the present location, which has already been identified. Then what I have done, I have taken the geomorphology map from the Bhuvan portal, and you can see here that this is the zoomed region. This is the geomorphology map for the entire Uttarakhand, and if I have zoomed it at for the watershed, and you can see that the location of dam is on the structural origin. And here I have shown you the lineament map, and you can see that near to this location there is no lineament present. So geologically, I can say that the location is okay, and so at present, we know that the position is okay, but this kind of studies can be done for the new projects. So this is the location of Lakwar Dam as seen on the Google Earth. And then I have done the hydro processing. As I told you, this is the digital elevation model. This is the field sync DEM, and then this is the flow direction map. This is the generated drainage network for the region. Then this is the Lakwar Dam catchment and its drainage network. Then I have done the hydroprocessing using the SWOT model, using the land use, land cover, soil, and digital elevation model, and I could generate how much runoff will be there at the location site. So you can see that the model is almost coming close to the observed discharge at the location, which is slightly downstream the actual location of the uh, dam. And then with the help of digital elevation model, I have calculated the possible water spread of the reservoir. So in this analysis, you require only the digital elevation model, good quality digital elevation model. So what we do in this study, the location which you have identified for the dam, you change the DEM value, digital elevation model value, by adding the proposed dam height, and then you do the iteration, and you will can generate the water spread. So I'll show you that. So this is the possible water spread area of the Lakwar dam, which I have generated using. So this is for this. Then what we have done, we have taken the dam height is of different elevation. Then the what will be the possible water spread. So this information is again further utilized for many purposes, such as to derive the elevation area capacity curve. So this is the derived elevation area capacity curve. Then whatever water spread we have extracted, if we overlay this over the land use, land cover map, we'll come to know how much forest, agriculture, or settlement is going to submerge. So in this analysis, we found that forest area which is going to be submerged is around 760 hectares, and agriculture area which is going to submerge is only 8 hectares. And it is proposed that this project is going to irrigate around 40,000 hectare of land. So you can see the utility of this project. Then after the project, also the remote sensing data or geospatial technology can be utilized to monitor the project, such as land use, land cover change impact on the dam, such as how much runoff will change, how much water will come in the reservoir. So those kind of analysis can be done using the hydrological modeling, and you can study how the land use change, and what will be the impact of this the reservoir or the dam. Similarly, the changing the climatic parameters, meteorological parameters, the hydrological models can be run again, and the climate change impact analysis can be done. Then in this way, the project implementation monitoring can be done. Then for the resettlement monitoring, whether the people which we have to resettle because of their houses have been submerged, so that can be monitored using high resolution remote sensing data, where they can be resettled or been resettled. Similarly, afforestation can also be monitored. Similarly, reservoir sedimentation studies can be done using remote sensing data. If it is a glaciated region, then the GLOF kind of disaster studies can also be done using remote sensing data. Then I'll take some slides on the site suitability analysis for water harvesting structure. So in the water scarce regions, we can carry out this kind of study. So I have taken the Hatni watershed as a study area. So from the NBSS soil map, we can generate the soil texture map, and then we can give appropriate weightage based on its guidelines available for the water harvesting structures, such as in this case we are targeting the check dams. For check dams, if it is a clay soil, loomy soil, it is better. And if you're talking about the farm pond, again the clay soils will be much better. And then the slope also we have generated through the DM, and then we have classified that slope into different classes: 0 to 1, 1 to 3, 3 to 5% slope, 5 to 10% slope, 10 to 15, 15 to 35, and more than 35, based on the guidelines given by the IMSD. So, and then we have assigned some weightages to the slope, and then we have done the stream monitoring. So it is as per the um, guidelines, we have assigned the weightages to the particular stream, and then as a proxy to the runoff, we have used the curve number, and we have given the weightages to curve number. And using the simple overlay analysis, we have identified the suitable sites. So if you see, these are the some of the sites we have, those are coming under the highly suitable. And if you see, in on the December 2017 image. So at this location, this check dam has come. At this location, some water body has come. In this location, this water body has come. So these are the all check dams. So this is again, I'm verifying that yes, the approach is valid, and the remote sensing data can be used for identifying the suitable sites for water harvesting. Then further, we can also study the impact of or the impact assessment of the project implementation. So you can see here, in 1989, before the check dams were constructed, these were the yellow patches were the vegetated area. But however, in 2017, if you see, after coming up of this some more water bodies or the check dams, the area of agricultural land has increased, or the vegetated area has increased. So because as the water is available, because of that, the vegetated area has increased. Further, with the help of high resolution data, we can also monitor the plantation or afforestation. Then remote sensing data and the geospatial technology can also be utilized in flood mapping, monitoring, and modeling. So this is the example of Bihar flood, which has happened due to the breach of this embankment, and it was a very huge uh, flood in 2008. So you can see that in the different remote sensing data, how the flood has started and how much area it has covered. So in on August 20th August of 2008, this was the situation. Then the flood has proceeded on the 22nd August. Then this is the optical image of 23rd August. Then you can see the situation on 27th August, 29th August, 10th September. So in this way, we can study the progression of the flood, and we can study how much area is under the flood or affected by the flood. So
Sir, may I interrupt a little, please? That I have seen that flood image. Is the river changes the course as per the fan deposit? There's some fan shaped deposit like the picture is there, and river is changing the course.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
In this case, the river has also changed its course because of this breach.
Acha. Thank
Then,
you, sir. Thank you.
yeah, with the help after analyzing the temporal remote sensing data and extracting the flood pixels or flood water, we can generate this kind of flood hazard map, which is very important for management point of view. See that this shows that at this particular location where the color is light pink, this area is most vulnerable, and every year we receive, or very frequently in all the analysis, these pixels are being mapped as a flood. Then the pink pixels, 4 times out of 5 images, it has been uh, identified as a flood. So from the management point of view, the relief should be, or the rescue should start from this region. So the administrative administration take decision to evacuate the people from these low-lying areas, and they can save the life. So this information is very useful for flood management point of view. And then those were the flood mapping. Now flood modeling can also be done using the remote sensing inputs. So these are the results of hack HMS hydrodynamic model. Then for the Mahanadi Delta. So this kind of studies will tell you along the river how the water level is changing at particular cross section, how the water level is changing. As the water level is changing, how much water spread is taking place. So these kind of analysis can be done using the geospatial inputs. Then remote sensing or geospatial data can be utilized for reservoir sedimentation. So all of you know that the sedimentation takes place. We cannot avoid this phenomena, or we cannot entirely stop it, but we can control it. So to control it, we should know what is the rate of sedimentation. So as the sedimentation takes place, the capacity of the reservoir decreases. So all of you know that the remote sensing provides the synoptic coverage of the surface of the Earth at a regular interval. So we are getting the satellite image at every 16th day or 22nd day, or nowadays with the help of Sentinel, we are getting the satellite image at every 10th day. So as the time progress, just before the monsoon onset of the monsoon, water will be, the water in the reservoir will be at the MDDL, near to MDDL, and after the monsoon it will be close to the FRL. And if we have the cloud free optical remote sensing data of these or for the entire time period, we can see that how the water spread has changed. And considering that the area between the volume between two dates of, or the two water spread as the trapezoidal, using this trapezoidal formula we can estimate the volume of the reservoir. So, and then we can take the cumulative sum of the all the capacity of between two elevation, and we can assess the revised capacity of the reservoir. So I'll show you some case studies. This is the study of Ujjini reservoir. So in this we can see that, yeah, it's not working. I don't know why. So here I have shown you the water spread on a satellite image, and then this is the extracted water body or water spread area, and here I have mentioned the elevation of the water on that particular day. So I will show you this through the, yeah, you can see here how the water spread is changing with time, and how the water level is changing with time. So these are the dates for which the data has been analyzed, and this was the water level. This is the water spread on each day of this remote sensing data, and this is the capacity between these two elevations, and this is the capacity between these two elevation, and then for each elevation we have estimated the capacity. And from this we have estimated the capacity between this elevation, from this elevation 491 to 497, and this is at 496, around 496 the reservoir has the FRL. So now the revised capacity what we have estimated in 2017-16 is around 1344 billion cubic meter, which was at the time of the commencement of the reservoir was around 1500. Now the capacity has lost around 173 million cubic meter at the rate of 4.33 million cubic meter per year. Similarly, this is the example of Nath Sagar reservoir, how the water spread is changing with time, how the water level is going down. So similarly, these are the dates for which the remote sensing data has been analyzed. This was the water level, this was the water spread, this is the capacity between two elevation, and this is the cumulative capacity. So now if you compare the live capacity with the design live capacity, which was around 2171 million cubic meter, now had reduced to 1917 million cubic meter, and this reservoir is getting silted at the rate of 6.2 million cubic meter per year. So this is the capability of remote sensing data, and then we can generate the elevation capacity curve or elevation area capacity curve for the reservoir. So these are, so this is how you can the graph shows that at every elevation the water capacity is reducing, the capacity of the reservoir is reducing. So it is very convenient, very less time consuming. You can sit in your lab, analyze the data, and you can do the reservoir sedimentation. For this sedimentation analysis, we require the water level, for which we depend upon the dam authorities. And there may be some water bodies or dam reservoirs; those are not monitored by any authority. So for that, recently the satellite altimeters have been used to retrieve the water level of the reservoirs. So it is simple technique, based on the time delay approach. So satellite is sending some the beam, microwave beam, synthetic aperture radar beam, and we are estimating the time of the particular beam to return back to the sensor. So if there is a change in the surface, if there is any change in the surface, the time lapse will change. So analyzing that time lapse, we can analyze the water level of the particular water body using this formula as given here. Then these are the different altimeters available. Some of them are not working now, and these are the current altimeters and some future missions I have listed here. So you can utilize their data and you can estimate the water level of the different water bodies, inland water bodies. So these altimeters were mainly developed for the sea surface height estimation, but with the time, the advancement, these have been utilized for inland water bodies also. So I have done the case study for the Nath Sagar and Ujjaini reservoir using the Sentinel-3 altimeter data. And this data, it has been analyzed in the BRAT software. Again, it is a freeware. It is available on internet. You can download and you can analyze the altimeter data. Even the altimeter data, remote sensing altimeter remote sensing data is also freely available on internet for all the altimeters which I have mentioned in the list earlier. So this is the Ujjaini reservoir, and this is, you can see here, these are the dates on which the altimeter pass was there over the reservoir, and this was the observed water level, and this is the water level retrieved from the altimeter. And you can see even the centimeter accuracy have been achieved for the water level estimation using satellite altimeters. Even in the Nath Sagar reservoir, we have achieved the centimeter accuracy using the altimeter data for the water level retrieval. So I'd like to conclude my presentation. So remote sensing provides us the near real-time hydrological information from few hours to few days. Spatial information from 1 meter to few kilometers, synoptic coverage of from 25 kilometer to 800 kilometer. That means if you want to study the entire state or region, you have to go for a higher swath data, maybe of 800 kilometer. If you want to analyze for a particular region, particular location, you have to go for high spatial resolution data with swath of less swath, maybe of 25 kilometer, if you want to do the targeted study. So remote sensing applications are huge in water resources, and I can say that the remote sensing or geospatial technology can be utilized for all the purposes such as water resources assessment, water resources development, water resource management, watershed analysis and management. So as a conclusion, I can say that the remote sensing data or geospatial technology has application in each and every aspect of water resources. So thank you so much. And
Thank you.
if you have any queries, you can
Yes.
ask me, or you can write to me at webhub@irs.gov.in, which is my official email ID.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir, for such a wonderful talk. Now, may I request? I think there are certain questions that has already been in chat box. So, can I
Okay.
take the questions, sir, please?
Yes, please.
Okay. So the first question is from Professor Jaria from NIT Raipur, that he has asked, what is the accuracy of soil moisture study of, I think, study in India? How it is carried out?
Yes, it's a really good question. Yes, there are certain limitations of remote sensing, as the remote sensing, the microwave data cannot penetrate more deeper. So whatever we are getting, it is of surface soil moisture, and all of you know all of you know that the measurement of the soil moisture is very limited in our country. So these estimations are reasonably good for the hydrological studies. See, or further, these data which is available on soil moisture, or the products of soil moisture, those are of coarser nature, but they may be utilized for the as a preliminary information on the soil moisture.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. I hope the question is well addressed. Now, there's another question from Tejas Bansode from GC Karad, that he has asked that the physical model that Mike Eshi is more accurate than where we used SWAT model, that is empirical plus physical. How we can decide which one is better for the study area?
Good, very good. See, that is why I have shown you there are different type of archaeological models, and those are freely available, but it depends upon your objective. First thing, it depends upon your objective, how accurate you want to analyze the runoff or the hydrological components. But if for that, you have to go for distributed physically based. But then as the you go for this kind of model, the inputs may increase, complexity will increase. So it depends upon your objective and the data available with you. Based on that, you can select the model. But the variable infiltration capacity model, it requires a lot of data which is not being collected in India. But we whatever studies we have done using the assimilated data which is available on the internet. But
Okay.
SWOT is also most widely used model, so you can use either SWOT model or WIC if you have the inputs available with you.
Okay. There is one more question from Rehan Ahmed Khan, that he's asking that may I know the status of fault using remote sensing data? That means he want to, I think, ask the question that whether the status of the fault can be monitored with the help of remote sensing.
What I have to, I could not. Can you please repeat the question?
Yeah, the question that he has written is as, may I know the status of fault using remote sensing data?
Salt,
I think
soil salinity.
soil. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So studies have been done to analyze the Salinity, soil salinity. As I told you that I have shown you in the very first slide that the all the features on the surface of Earth, they have been identified based on the spectral response. So as the salt will appear on the soil, on the surface of the soil, the reflectance will change. The reflectance will change. If you analyze the change on the field, how much is the salinity, and you analyze the change in the spectral response at particular location, you can correlate and you can estimate how much is the salinity. There are indices also, just as I have shown you the indices for the water index or the snow index or the vegetation index. Similarly, the indices are available for salinity. If
Okay.
you surf in the internet, you may get it.
Okay, sir. Okay. Thank
Uh,
you. I
excuse
think
me.
Deshpande sir want to ask a question.
Yes,
Yeah,
please.
please.
Was there any trial ever before to find out the feasibility for the tidal power plant? The assessment of the tidal power of any
Tidal power.
estuary in an environment where estuary confluence with the sea. So at those locations, can we find the sites for?
You're asking about the site suitability analysis for Hydel power project. Hello. Hello.
I think Deshpande sir have lost some net connection, it seems.
Mhm.
Okay, so by the time he asked the question, there is one more question that is raised in the chat box. That is uh, that please explain the method to obtain geological data of an area, as this is an important aspect in groundwater analysis.
Uh, Availability of data, as I told
Uh,
you,
huh.
for the for see, a lot of studies has already been done for the groundwater prospecting, prospect joining. So you require the land use, soil, or geomorphology. So as I've shown you, a Nilament map, which is those are very important, and those are available on the Bhuvan portal. So some of them, such as DEM, you can download directly from the Bhuvan at 30 meter resolution for any part of the India, and the geomorphology and Nilament maps, and the land use land cover map, and the wasteland map you can use as a WMS layer, and you can do the analysis. And further, you can do the hydrological modeling for the recharge and other thing using the geospatial inputs. So these inputs are very much available. You can explore the Bhuvan portal of ISRO.
Hopefully that has been answered. There is one question again from Sandeep Girgaonkar. He's asking that is it possible to identify maximum silt carrying channels so as to reduce the silting of reservoir?
Yes, uh, you can utilize the SWOT model.
Okay.
SWOT, even reach wise, you will come to know how much sediment yield is there. So you have to use the remote sensing data such as digital elevation model, and you can analyze and you have to give the meteorological data, and you divide your basin into number of sub basins or sub watershed, and for each reach of the river, you will come to know how much is the yield, and or you can apply the soil erosion models such as Roosevelt or any other model, and you have to do the prioritization, and you have to identify which sub watershed or what is generating more erosion, and you can take up the different measures to control the erosion so that the sedimentation can be controlled.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir. I think
Yes,
Deshpande
sir.
sir have joined, so he can ask the question. Deshpande sir,
Yes,
please.
yes.
That is what I was asking. Whether this technique can be used for assessing the feasibility of the tidal power plant or tidal power project.
Yes, sir. As I have shown you some examples of hydropower projects and the water harvesting structures. So based on the guidelines, you can give the weightage to different layers, and you can identify the suitable locations for anything.
Okay, sir.
It may be a hydropower project, it may be a water harvesting project.
Okay, sir. Okay, hopefully, I think I have covered all the questions that has been put in the chat box or the question and answer column that is provided here. So now I take this privilege to thank you, to say thanks to Dr. Vaibhav Garg sir for sharing his valuable time, and the session was wonderful. It has covered almost all aspects of the geospatial techniques which can be applicable to the water resources, right from flood mapping. We are just faced in the last year we have faced the worst flood probably in the Kolhapur and Sangli region. So certainly these studies are now the need of the hours, and hopefully we can learn from you and we can do a little contribution, if not more. Thank you so much for guiding us in that direction. And also, I'm grateful for sharing your valuable time. You must be busy, we know, at IRS. So thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
If any of the participant has any further queries, they can write to me on my email.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Now for participants. So we have concluded for today's all three sessions. Our day 2 was started with the session of Mr. Kishore Deshmukh, a senior geologist from Geological Survey of India. Then the session 2 was with the Dr. Chatterjee sir from IRS Dehradun, and the last session was just now we have concluded with the Vaibhav Garg sir again from IRS with the Water Resource Department. So soon you will receive the tomorrow schedule and also the attendance status. There were certain queries that how this WebEx attendance has been monitored and all. It is been inbuilt system, and we are monitoring it so that there should be some proper sincerity regarding the FDP via and there shall be attention. There was also certain queries that regarding the assignments. Yes, it is for benefit of ours. If we try to write something, then we will, of course, remain focused and we will grasp more. And that's the only motive, nothing more than that. So thank you so much. And we will see you tomorrow at 10:30, not 10:30, 10 o'clock sharp in the morning. Thank you. I request host to conclude the meeting, please.